All right here. Hey, my name is Ryan. So if you are a subscriber of this channel and you follow my content regularly, number one, thank you. I appreciate you. Or if you're a newcomer and are here for the first time, thank you as well. I appreciate you as well. You can scroll back on my page and see that pretty much every one of my videos is outside, mostly fishing. With that being said, hard to tell, but it's gonna be a rainy day today with very high winds, so you know, conditions aren't looking too good. So I thought I would take the time to go through something I'm very passionate about, which is training and fitness and just preparedness. Because ultimately, and I haven't really discussed this on this channel, but that is what I spent the majority of my career doing. And a lot of my free time, just training, learning about training, and just, you know, being in gyms and things like that. In fact, I have another YouTube channel that I probably am not going to contribute to anymore that is called, I think, just my name, and like it's just about how training is fun. I also had an Instagram account where I was doing the same. And so I kind of want all these things to just be one big amalgamation in this channel here, the Go Do Stuff channel. And I think that this is the only platform I'm really going to contribute to for the foreseeable future. So here's my first video on fitness for this channel. And I want it to remain pretty general for the most part for the first video. And what I want to talk about today is how I stay physically prepared. And actually what I've done is I have written an essay on this topic. So I'm not just going to be talking about this. I have it here on my phone. I don't have a teleprompter, so I know you're used to maybe people looking at the actual screen, but listen, I have decent reading skills. I can look back and forth, you know what I mean? I'll probably link this essay like in the video description if I can do that, so you can read it as well. But without any further ado, let's get started. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Unique New York, unique New York. I had a ham sandwich at 11. I had a ham sandwich at, all right, here we go. As you can tell by the title of this video, I want to talk about how I stay physically prepared and what exactly I mean by that. This is a relatively new channel, but just a quick scroll through my videos and you can tell that this isn't necessarily a fitness channel, although aspects of fitness are present in nearly all of my videos. I created this channel with a main goal of being a form of self-expression, doing stuff I want to do, talking about stuff I want to talk about, which largely revolves around being active in the outdoors. And so today I want to talk about how I stay physically prepared from a training perspective, to go do stuff that I want to do out in the world. Now, before we get into that, let's ask the important question, why should you listen to me? Well, you don't have to. And if in the first couple of minutes of this video you've already pinned me as a grifter, a schmuck, a ne'er-do-well, well then by all means go ahead and move on to one of those other videos that, where would they be, like right here, I think? But I'll know if you do. I'm watching you. Always watching you. However, if your interest is piqued, let me tell you a little bit about myself, which I think is important in and of itself for the community building that I want to do with this channel. So, who am I? From a young age, I was fascinated with physical training. It started in my parents' basement when my mom and dad bought my brother and I a Walmart weight set. One of those benches that is an all-in-one kind of thing. It had a lat pull down, a knee extension, one of those weird, thin barbells, and weights filled with concrete or sand. But it was awesome nonetheless, and a perfect opportunity to start my training journey. Once I matriculated into high school, I started taking strength and conditioning classes, and my love for training exploded. So much so that my time in college was mostly spent pursuing a better understanding of the training process. This is particularly true in regards to the master's I received in applied health and exercise science at Kennesaw State University. During this period of my life, specifically, all I thought about was training. I wanted to know everything I could about training, not only so I could become the strongest I could be, but also so I could coach others to do the same. I competed in powerlifting for a number of years, with my best lifts being I then got into weightlifting, and my best lifts here are I've done a number of internships, worked as a personal trainer in person, and as my master's was finishing up, I started my own online coaching business, which I still run today. As a result of all of this, I have had the pleasure of working with hundreds of people in respect to their fitness goals. I have worked with strength athletes in preparation for a powerlifting meet, a boxer getting ready for his first bout, police officers and firemen who need to stay ready for their field, baseball players wanting to increase their bat speed, and grandmas who are just trying to stay healthy. I feel very fortunate to have experienced such a wide breadth of situations, goals, and people as I reflect on my coaching career. I enjoy looking into the mechanisms of physiology and how we can positively influence the various systems within our body through training. I also enjoy reading more general training literature, and I have been heavily influenced by bodies of work such as James Smith's The Governing Dynamics of Coaching and Mladen Jovanovic's The Strength Training Manual. And there's a ton of other books that I'll just randomly put on the screen right here that I've read that I've loved about training. Furthermore, the way I interact with my clients from a relationship perspective is heavily influenced by Carl Rogers' work, A Way of Being and On Becoming a Person. And there's a bunch of other coaching and psychology books that I love, that I've read, that I'll put all over the screen right here. Again, I bring all of this up simply so you can get a better idea of who I am and what I have done, and then you can choose for yourself whether you'd like to listen to my opinion or not, because ultimately that's what I'm about to give you. It's my opinion. So, let's get started. What does it mean to be physically prepared? I think the best place to start is an understanding of what I mean by physically prepared. Although I have showed you the best lifts I have ever done, I wasn't solely trying to paint the picture of physical fitness through the lens of heavy weights alone. Strength is only a part of physical fitness. In fact, I would consider myself now more physically fit than where I was when I was able to perform lifts like those. On average, I was like 30 pounds heavier in those videos and neglecting aspects of my fitness in order to pursue those heavy weights. Sure, I could move a barbell like nobody's business, but I struggled greatly to run a mile. So when I say physical fitness or preparedness, I'm implying a more broad and general take, which I will define as the ever-increasing capacity to involve yourself in the wide breadth of recreational activity we as humans participate in. Now, I don't mean this as a perfectly universal definition of physical fitness. I am simply defining it through the lens of life I am currently in, as well as one that I think is just generally beneficial. Ultimately, what I want you to get out of this channel, and what I want to get out of this channel, is the realization that you are also capable of going and doing stuff. That you certainly can not only increase your physical fitness to the degree where new and exciting activities are afforded to you, but also to gain the courage to participate in those activities, whatever they may be. It's not about the singular pursuit of one aspect of fitness, which I have done, because such a singular pursuit tends to occupy most of your training time, which I have experienced. And let me be clear, I am not saying that this is a bad thing. I think this is fantastically inspiring. The feats we as humans have accomplished when we put our mind to something particular, whether that be a 1,000-pound squat or a sub 4-minute mile. It's about increasing all levels of your physical ability such that you feel capable of participating in whatever recreational activity is piquing your interest at any given moment. A very generalized sense of just being ready, if you will. For me, personally, I currently view my physical fitness as a tool or set of tools I can use to interact with the world. If my physical fitness makes me feel more capable, then I will be more inclined to go on that camping trip, or hike up that mountain, or try water skiing, or whatever. I am constantly blown away by the vast depth and rich amount of recreational opportunities we have, and I don't want to limit those opportunities, of course, within reason. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna go climb Mount Everest or something like that, you know what I mean? Guiding theories and principles. Have you ever heard of that story about the grandma and the turtles? A prominent scientist is giving a public lecture on cosmology, and an old lady in the back says that the scientist is wrong, that really, the universe is a flat disk balanced on the back of a turtle. Then the scientist asks, well, what is the turtle standing on? To which the old lady replies, you're very clever, young man, but it's turtles all the way down. I promise I'm going to connect the dots here. This story is an allegory for the problem of infinite regression, that the validity of an explanation relies on another presupposed explanation, which relies on another one, and so on and so forth until all of space-time is filled by an infinite stack of turtles. But I also think of this allegory whenever I ask myself the hard question, what do I really actually believe in? When it's all said and done, what theories or principles am I using to serve as the bedrock through which I structure my thinking and training? What would be my first turtle? Well, I'm going to give you a few turtles here. Ideas that serve as the infrastructure that successfully hold up a training regimen aimed at improving physical preparedness. Certainly other turtles could be involved here as well, but these are what work for me. Turtle number 1, the ecological theory of motor learning. Yeah, that's right. We are starting off with a theory. Think of a theory as a net that attempts to capture a part of the world and offer up an explanation for why that part of the world is the way it is. The ecological theory of motor learning attempts to capture the phenomenon of movement and explains why and how we move as a delicate interaction between an organism and its environment. Let me give you an example of this, of which I need you to use your imagination for. There are two dogs, Dave and Jim, walking through the forest. Dave is old, he's got gray hairs around his mouth and is starting to get those glassy eyes old dogs sometimes get, you know what I mean? But make no mistake, Dave is a wise dog. Jim's a spring chicken, he's young and athletic. Dave and Jim happen upon a deep creek that is too deep to walk through and it's cold, so they don't want to swim. Jim almost immediately realizes that this creek is narrow enough such that he can jump over it as long as he gets a running start. So Jim backs up about 10 yards, runs like the devil, jumps over the creek, and lands on the other side, dry as a bone. Dave in his old age knows he can't make that jump, so he doesn't even bother entertaining that idea, but because Dave is a wise dog, he starts looking around to see if the creek gets any more narrow, or if maybe there's another way to cross. And what do you know, about 30 yards down, there's a big tree that fell across the creek, providing a perfect and dry route to the other side. Dave and Jim then continue on their merry way. The ecological theory of motor learning, rooted in the American psychologist James J. Gibson's work, is a framework for how organisms perceive the world around them through the combination of affordances and constraints. Affordances are the possibilities for action within an environment. Constraints are the limitations imposed upon an organism based upon their current level of understanding of the world around them and their current level of physicality. And these two phenomena aren't totally separate entities either, as many affordances are only afforded to you if you have a certain threshold of physicality in which to perceive them. Jim, the young dog, quickly perceived the affordance of jumping over the creek because of his athleticism and physicality. Dave, the old dog, did not perceive this affordance because he was constrained by his physicality. The thought of jumping over the creek didn't even cross his mind, but he was still wise enough to continue looking around for an alternative route. Cool. So what does this have to do with being physically prepared? Remember, this discussion of physical fitness in the context of this video revolves around your capacity for participation in recreational activity. Hiking, paddling, fishing, hunting, swimming, biking, whatever. When I was 270 pounds and trying to lift the most weight I could, many of the activities I enjoy doing now didn't even cross my mind because I felt heavy and my aerobic conditioning was so low. I didn't go on hikes. I didn't kayak or paddle as much as I do now. I didn't do those things because I didn't really think I could do them well. However, as I started losing weight and focusing on my aerobic fitness more, I started to do these things more. I started paddling more. I rode my bike more. I went fishing more. Now, I'm not saying that this is solely because I lost weight that my interest in recreation grew. I've always loved these things, and part of my interest was reigniting that love. But my weight loss was most definitely an influencing factor. I believe the mind and the body are closely and intimately intertwined, that increasing your mental aptitude as well as your physical capabilities loads a synergistic slingshot that can launch you out into the world. The more physically capable you become, the more fun and creative ideas that will manifest in your mind. You literally couldn't do those things beforehand, so you didn't think you could do them. My favorite personal experience of this of recent is when I went paddleboarding down a river and then biked back up to my truck. I purchased a paddleboard a few months ago and had taken it out a few times and gotten used to it, while also somewhat consistently riding my bike for exercise. One day I thought, how about I take that paddleboard down a section of a river that I love but didn't have a way back up? So I just rode my bike back up to my truck because I knew I could travel that distance even after a long day on my paddleboard. It's important to remember that this is a theory and not a perfect worldview, but I consider this theory to be an important turtle for me. It's important because for me, it serves as inspiration to continue working on and improving my physical fitness. The more prepared and fit I am, the more willing and able I am to go out into the world, try, and hopefully to be successful at both new and familiar things. I want to create content on this channel that no one else is really doing. I want to do things many other people cannot do, and in order to do that, I need to believe that I can. Turtle number 2, the SAID principle. I want to preface this next discussion by saying I do not intend to sound ignorantly ableist. I understand that there are circumstances people may have to deal with in regards to their physiology that may not give them a fair shake. I only intend to write from a general perspective, one that provides everyone with the same informational platform to jump off of, and from there you can tailor this information to your own situation. With this being said, let's take a very quick look at some examples of physiological adaptation. Let's say you perform a really good set of curls. Inside of your bicep, you have what are called mechanoreceptors, a sense organ that interprets mechanical stimuli like force production. As these mechanoreceptors interpret the stimulus, mechanotransduction takes place, where this mechanical stress is converted into chemical signaling, which ultimately leads to an increase of muscle protein synthesis with a process of building and repairing muscle. Or how about this? Let's say you go for a good jog. That jog will upregulate angiogenesis, or the production of new blood vessels, like capillaries, which is where really important stuff happens, like the delivery of oxygen to your hard-working muscles. Again, that was a very quick peek under the hood. There's so much going on behind the scenes in our bodies, and if you want to really make your head spin, just Google any paper on molecular signaling in response to training, and try reading that sucker for just like 5 minutes. It's brutal, mind-blowing. My point, however, is this process of increasing physical fitness is not random. In fact, it is very, very specific. In fact, there is a concept that encapsulates this, the SAID principle, or the specific adaptation to imposed demands. Your body will specifically adapt to the training you expose it to because your body is wickedly smart. The stuff I was just talking about does not even scratch the surface in terms of all the little gadgets and gizmos your body possesses that translates information from exercising into actual adaptation, which we perceive as progress. All you have to do is take this machinery for a spin. You just gotta go do it. It's like that Shia LaBeouf meme.
Do it! Just do it!
Keep it simple. If you want to get stronger, do things that will make you stronger. If you want more energy, do things that will give you more energy. Your body will respond accordingly. And it can remain this simple because of the generalized context we are viewing physical fitness through. Again, we aren't trying to break any records here. We're just trying to stay physically fit and prepared. Baby, I actually wrote baby there, and it felt forced, and I'm sorry for that. There's my son. Let's try that again without the baby. You're just trying to stay physically prepared. I like the baby. The book, Concurrent Aerobic and Strength Training, has a fantastic quote in it that nicely bridges us to the concluding remarks for this section. Furthermore, it is important to recognize the necessity for exercise training to be performed at appropriate levels, such as intensity, duration, and frequency, in order to invoke stimuli-driven perturbations of a magnitude to induce adaptation. What I don't want you to glean from this quote is that you have to train at an incredibly high intensity to invoke adaptation. And I feel like this is where many people get burned out too quickly on their respective fitness journeys. We say things like, train harder than last time, and you have to want it. And we espouse this intense narrative of blood and sweat when it comes to training, and it just doesn't have to be that way. It certainly can be that way if you are an elite athlete chasing a dream, or if you want to take training so seriously that you attempt to realize your utmost physical potential. In cases like these, life pretty much revolves around training. However, for most of the population, training should revolve around life. What I do want you to glean from this quote, however, is that in order to make consistent progress, you need to train to a degree that is just above your baseline. This doesn't necessarily mean that every session has to be this way. In fact, many workouts will be lackluster, or you might feel a bit run down, or you just might not have it that day. Training sessions like these are inevitable. We are human after all and not perfect. However, as long as the aggregate of all of your training sessions over the course of years reflects actual effort, then you can rest assured knowing you've done enough to make progress. Effort will look different for everyone. If you have just started your training journey, the physical manifestation of your effort will look different than someone who has trained for years. However, the benefit of effort remains the same across all groups of people in that your body will recognize it as a signal to adapt in some way. This is a great segue into our next turtle, which is turtle number 3, the principle of graded exposure. My hamstrings have given me the most problems in my athletic and training career. On both legs, I've experienced multiple grade 1 strains and a few grade 2 tears with bruising and, ooh, my voice just cracked. Man, it's a good thing I'm not reading in class. My friends would freaking roast me right there. Where was I? And a few grade 2 tears with bruising and swelling. Interestingly enough, the worst hamstring injuries I've experienced have always been from sprinting, and we're always returning to sprinting after having some time off. One of my worst hamstring injuries took place during my senior year of baseball when I was running out a ground ball and popped my left hamstring when I touched first base. I did one of these moves, you know what I'm saying? At like, who knows how fast I was running, like 20, 25 miles an hour. This injury took place during our very first inter-squad, right after a long winter break, where I hadn't done much high-velocity sprinting, if any at all. The principle of graded exposure is a paradigm that will help you make intelligent, effective, and safe training decisions. It does this through revealing 2 truths. Number 1, you are only as robust as the training you have recently done. The said principle is relevant here, in that if you haven't done any high velocity sprinting in years, you shouldn't expect your body to have any robust adaptations that will protect itself from high velocity sprinting. Your muscles, tendons, and ligaments simply aren't used to it, and exposing them to such a discrepancy is, well, not the wisest choice to say the least. You can apply this thinking to any training activity. You shouldn't max out your squat if you haven't squatted in forever. You shouldn't do very intense plyometrics if you haven't jumped in forever. I'm not saying you will certainly get injured if you do. I am just saying the probability is a little bit higher. Number 2, training can nearly always be safely done as long as you can reasonably tolerate the intensity of the training. This truth just builds upon the previous one and provides an extremely practical direction for your training to head. So you haven't sprinted at max velocity in forever. That doesn't mean you can't safely sprint, especially if you have kept yourself in decent shape. Maybe you can tolerate tempo runs where you run at 75% intensity over a relatively long distance, like 100 yards. Or maybe any form of sprinting is, right now, too much for you, but you can certainly go for a good walk. Every exercise or training activity has multiple aspects through which you can progress or regress its intensity such that it fits your current level of preparedness. If you want to learn how to squat but are intimidated by the barbell, start with a less intimidating implement like the dumbbell. If you are working towards a PR in the clean and jerk, then a few sessions spent handling 90% plus weights will be great preparation. For the most part, there shouldn't be huge discrepancy between the intensity of the training you presently do and the training you have recently done, or in many cases, not done any training at all. Start where you can and build up. That's what graded exposure means. At some point, if you stick with it, you will build a level of preparedness that will allow you to do many different things not only safely, but also very successfully. Turtle number 4, training is fun. Here is the most beautiful part. You can learn to love and enjoy your training. In fact, you can learn to love training so much that it becomes another recreational activity that you just get to participate in. At the end of the day, for me, I find enjoyment in physical activity. Yes, the physical consequences you reap from training are worth the time you spend training, but the mental benefits and enjoyment you can learn to experience through training make the entire process that much sweeter. Slinging tin, pumping iron, letting it fly, letting the big dog eat. Man, I just got fired up there. However you want to put it, it's just fun participating in some hard physical activity, and lifting weights is the perfect medium for this. It's hard to replicate the natural high you can manifest when going for a heavy power clean, or the sweet, sweet pump you can generate after blasting a set of bicep curls into oblivion. On the other end of the spectrum, just taking a walk or jog and beat bopping around the neighborhood while listening to my favorite tunes is a fantastic means of clearing my head while also experiencing the bliss of the runner's high. A sense of euphoria. if you will. I look forward to my training, and I want you to look forward to your training as well. Part of this is a balancing act, as we have already discussed, but a large part of finding enjoyment in training is made possible by participating in training that you find interesting. There's a really good book titled New: Understanding Our Need for Novelty and Change, which I read some time ago that has heavily influenced my perspective on this specifically, which is that we humans exist on this continuum of the need for novelty. For some of us, just meeting someone new might be enough novelty for your week, while others might have to jump out of a perfectly good airplane to get their fix. This continuum exists in training as well. All you have to do is search for training that interests you. There's quite literally an infinite amount of iterations that a training schedule can be manifested through. If you're just getting started, then the novelty of learning basic exercises and progressing them from week to week will be novel enough. If you've been training for ages, then maybe learning the Olympic lifts is the next destination on your training journey. Training shouldn't feel like a chore. It shouldn't be just another box you have to check off. It can be something that you look forward to. It can be a release, it can be an outlet, it can be catharsis, it can be extraordinarily fun if you give it the opportunity to be. It can be an avenue through which you learn how to enjoy the sensations of being alive and fully present in the moment. Training is fun. Man, this is a long essay. I need to get some water. My throat is parched. And also, look at what I found. This little guy started to sing last night. We were singing Wheels on the Bus, and he went all through the town. Do you want to try? All through the town. It's okay. All through the town. You want to try it? Okay, that's all right, bud. The constituents of physical fitness. Our human physiology possesses many different attributes that can be expressed and enhanced through training. We can run, we can jump, store energy and release energy. We can work for long periods of time at a low intensity, or we can work for short periods of time at a high intensity. And because I'm viewing physical fitness from a generalized sense, in that I aim to be generally prepared, I consistently train each of these physical qualities at the same time. This is known as vertical integration in the training realm, where you train each quality to a degree within the same day or week. Depending upon the season of life I'm in or whatever I'm more interested in at the time, training may shift a bit to emphasize one quality more or less, but nevertheless, I aim to always train each quality to a minor degree. So what exactly are these physical qualities that I am speaking of? Energy production, which I'm further categorizing into aerobic or anaerobic, strength, power, muscular hypertrophy, and mobility. These are large-scale categories that underpin human movement. The more capable you are within each category, the more physically prepared you will be. Now, you can push one quality to the detriment of others, but this is extremely hard to actually do. It's also important to understand there's overlap between these categories. You aren't going to be powerful if you aren't strong in some sense. So these qualities are interrelated to a degree. But from a practical perspective, it's useful to piece them out like this so you can specifically train them to a meaningful degree. I also don't claim this to be a perfect list, and maybe you would add or subtract some things depending upon what you are looking to get out of training, but these are the things that I want to have. With that being said, let's take a look at each of these qualities so we can gain a better understanding as to why we should train them and how we should train them. It's important to note that I'm barely going to scratch the surface with these in terms of explaining their underlying physiological mechanisms. I want to keep things as practical as possible here, so I want to give you just enough information such that you have a clear understanding of what each quality is and why it's important. A quick detour of energy production. Did you know our energy is actually a real thing, and our bodies have several ways of producing energy? You need real energy to move, think, and function. It's not just solely a matter of willpower in terms of your ability to perform physical tasks. In fact, it's a matter of how efficient your body is at producing energy for the nature of the physical task you wish to participate in. This energy is called ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, the source of energy for use and storage at the cellular level. Energy production is possible through ATP because of the molecule's 3 phosphate bonds. These bonds are sites of energy storage, and our bodies essentially break these bonds to provide energy so our bodies can function. So energy is a real thing, and that makes ATP extremely important, but we don't have an infinite supply of it just sitting around. In fact, we have relatively little ATP stored in the body at any given time, only enough to support intense activity for like 2 to 3 seconds. If we didn't have ways to resynthesize ATP, because again, we break down ATP for energy, well, I guess we would just keel over and fall to the ground. I don't really know what would happen, actually. Fortunately, evolution has blessed us with 3 separate pathways through which we can resynthesize ATP and therefore energy production. These 3 pathways are the phosphagen system, glycolysis, and the aerobic system. This is where the idea of conditioning comes in, or enhancing your body's ability to produce energy through these 3 systems. For this video, I am separating conditioning into aerobic and anaerobic conditioning. This delineation is in respect to the 3 pathways that we just discussed, where the phosphagen system and glycolysis are anaerobic, meaning without oxygen, and obviously the aerobic system, meaning with oxygen. Anaerobic conditioning. Anaerobic conditioning is important because it enhances your ability to perform higher intensity tasks for longer. The phosphagen system is predominantly reserved for extremely quick and explosive type movements, lasting up to about 10 seconds. Examples of movement here could be jumping, Olympic weightlifting, and quick sprints. The glycolytic system takes it up from there to about 3 minutes as the predominant energy system. Examples of movements that are highly glycolytic are 400-meter runs, intense paddling or biking, or a hard effort in a wrestling match. The logistics of improving your anaerobic conditioning are easy, although the effort needed to do so is not easy. What it really boils down to is just performing bouts of high and sustained effort within the time periods mentioned, from the onset of exercise and up to about 3 minutes, maybe 4, maybe 5. In James Smith's book, The Governing Dynamics of Coaching, he gives a really good distinction between improving the power of an energy system versus the capacity of an energy system. If you aim to improve the power of an energy system, or the speed and efficiency through which a system can produce energy, then the bout of exercise needs to be of the highest intensity that system can predominantly fuel, and recovery time should allow for near to complete recovery. For anaerobic conditioning, this could look like 10 to 20 yard sprints with 60 to 90 seconds rest, assault bike bursts lasting 10 to 15 to 20 to 25 to 30 seconds with 45 to 50 to 55 to 60 to 70, whatever, seconds rest. 150-meter rows done violently with 60 seconds rest. If you aim to improve the capacity of an energy system, or increasing the total amount of work that can be done through a specific energy system, then intensity needs to be dialed back a bit while also using incomplete recovery times. For anaerobic conditioning, this could look like 1-to-1 work-to-rest intervals like 30 seconds of rowing with a good effort followed by 30 seconds of rest. Circuits where you perform multiple exercises with low rest periods in between, tapping either side of a 20-yard distance as many times as you can within 3 minutes. The neat thing you will find about training each of these physical qualities is there are a ton of different ways to do so. As long as you know what the quality consists of, you can be as creative as you want when training for it. Aerobic conditioning. The aerobic system, or the oxidative system, is the body's predominant way of producing energy for low to moderate intense activities, where efforts can be sustained for, well, extremely long periods of time. I mean, just think about marathon runners to put this into perspective. It's also the system that provides most of our energy when we are just doing normal day-to-day things, like me talking to you right now. It's just sort of always on, always humming in the background, doing its thing and giving us energy. In my past, especially when I was dedicated to being as strong as I possibly could be, this is where I was lacking the most. Ironically, I now spend half or more than half of my training time here. What we are referring to here is the health of your cardiovascular and respiratory systems, your heart, blood vessels, and lungs. These systems are critically important because they do things like deliver oxygenated blood throughout your entire body. I don't want to present these qualities in a hierarchy of importance, but if I had to, this would be the most important one. For me, physical preparedness starts with a good set of heart and lungs. I'm going to keep the logistics of training this system extremely simple because it essentially just reflects the tagline of this channel. Go do stuff. Literally, just get out there and do stuff. You can go for walks. This has been the biggest game changer to my fitness. I go on a walk nearly every day now. I walk my dog. I take my son on walks. I go for long walks. I go for short walks. I generally walk fast, but sometimes I put on a backpack and ruck. Walking every day has helped me lose a lot of weight, about 30 pounds, and now I'm at a weight where I feel comfortable jogging and running again. Now I've been running for months and it feels incredible. It truly does. Just think about any activity you can perform over extended periods of time. Jogging, rowing, hiking, paddleboarding, biking. The key is to just find a rhythm you can sustain over an extended duration. Sometimes I will push harder for a shorter period of time, and sometimes I won't push as hard, but for long periods of time. I have found that not keeping tabs here, for the most part, has helped me enjoy aerobic conditioning that much more. Aerobic conditioning is the perfect excuse for just getting outside and moving. Strength. Strength is the quality of producing a maximum amount of force against a resistance. I'm not going to split hairs here either, as much of the literature divides strength up into various subcategories: absolute strength, explosive strength, strength endurance, starting strength, speed strength. You get the idea. I'm only talking about strength from a general sense, which again, I would define as producing a maximum amount of force against a resistance. Strength is an important constituent of physical preparedness because strength not only partially influences how well you can move around your environment, but also how well you can move stuff around in your environment. For instance, placing my canoe on my truck rack is not too difficult because of my strength. Or another example that highlights the synergy of multiple qualities is how I take my son on rucks, because my legs and back are strong enough to do so. Finally, the stronger you are, the more robust you are. A beautiful corollary of strength training is the underlying structures that hold your body together. Bones, tendons, and ligaments are also enhanced. Bones become more dense and resistant to fractures and breaks, while tendons and ligaments lay down more collagen to help improve their structural integrity. How do you train for strength? Well, you just gotta move heavy stuff around. You can use a barbell, you can use dumbbells, you can use machines, heck, you can even use some big rocks if you wanted to. You just need something heavy that you can try to move. Here is an extremely basic framework. 1 to 3 sets, 1 to 10 reps with weights that make those sets and reps relatively difficult. Use big compound movements that allow you to actually lift heavy weights. I can say a lot more about this as I spent the last decade of my life writing strength training programs, but at the end of the day, if you are producing lots of force, then you are working on your goal of improving strength. And if you are lifting weights that are heavy relative to you, then you are producing forces necessary to make you stronger. Power. Power can be mathematically defined through 2 formulas. Power equals work divided by time. Power equals force times velocity. These formulas do a great job of demonstrating what power is all about, producing force rapidly. We all know a powerful movement when we see one. We often call movements like these and the people who perform them explosive. Let's try that again. Explosive! Power is demonstrated well through movements we tend to neglect as we age. Jumping, sprinting, and throwing are all movements that are powerful. Being powerful is useful because in many cases it opens up new doors in the environment. Maybe you just need a sharp series of paddle strokes to keep you from heading towards that big rock downriver. Perhaps you are crossing a river and jumping from rock to rock keeps you from getting wet. Or maybe you are surf fishing with a buddy and you get a big run and the first person to the rod gets to catch the fish. This is actually a real thing. One of my best friends, Barry, and I call your pole time, which, like say we're sitting here in a set of chairs and you're right by me and the rod is like 10 yards that way. Whoever sees the run first gets up and runs to the pole, and whoever gets there gets to catch the fish. My pole time is much better than his. Always has been. I often think of power as being the cherry on top in terms of physical qualities. It sort of makes everything sweeter. Here are some ways to train for power. My favorite way to train for power is Olympic weightlifting. A massive amount of power is generated in the Olympic lifts, and they certainly teach you how to be powerful. But they also combine the idea of power production with high degrees of coordination. Plyometrics or jump training. Plyometrics specifically refers to repeated effort jumps where there is no pausing in between reps, but any kind of jumping will suit us just fine. The beautiful thing here is all you have to do is jump. If you can do all sorts of jumps, great. If you can only tolerate a little bit of jumping, that's great too. Just start where you can. Sprinting is one of the most efficacious ways of power training that we have inherently built within us and is probably the best example of the formula force times velocity in action. A sprint workout could be as something as simple as 5 reps at 20 yards with high effort. Muscular hypertrophy. Muscular hypertrophy simply means the increase of muscle mass and size. Just think of bodybuilders. We can quite literally increase the size of our muscles through training, which is really, really cool. Muscular hypertrophy is important to me on multiple fronts. For one, I would be lying if I said that I don't care about aesthetics. I do enjoy having a certain level of muscular development. It makes me feel confident, and I have no shame in admitting that. More importantly is that to a certain extent, of which this extent is extremely hard to reach for most people, muscular hypertrophy serves to facilitate strength and power. The more muscle you have, the higher your ceiling is for strength and power because you have a bigger engine to work with. Training for muscular hypertrophy is actually very similar to the recommendations I gave for strength training. Again, these qualities are interrelated to various degrees, and strength and muscular hypertrophy are tightly intertwined. If you are strength training, you are also giving your body a stimulus for muscular growth. There are some boxes I like to check, however, to emphasize that stimulus just a bit more. I will get close to failure, meaning I will do repetitions, say up to 12 to 15 repetitions, but generally around 6 to 10, where those final repetitions are the last reps, or close to the last reps I could have done. This means I have stimulated the majority of the muscle fibers within a muscle or muscle group, and a stimulated fiber is a trained fiber. And I will also sprinkle in movements that are not the traditional compound movements I have talked about so far. Exercises that are more isolated and not focused on total body coordination are great for developing hypertrophy because they allow you to singularly tax a specific set of muscles and really make sure that you do. Mobility. Mobility is often confused as solely flexibility, or the amount of range of motion you possess around a joint. Although mobility consists of flexibility, it also includes every other facet of preparedness we have talked about so far. I simply think about it as my ability to be mobile. Not sure if this is demonstrating that, but you get the idea. How well can I move my body? How mobile can I be? I don't simply want to feel like I have just a good range of motion about my joints. I want to feel strong, powerful, and that I can access any range of motion easily and for long periods of time. Mobility is also heavily influenced by coordination, which is seemingly an underrated quality of training. Training, especially the sort of varied training I am discussing that includes so many different physical tasks, is an excellent way of developing high degrees of coordination. Every movement that we do, especially things like Olympic lifting, or sprinting, or paddling, or climbing, or jumping, they all require coordination. They aren't necessarily movements you can just do because you can picture them in your mind or because you have seen someone else do them. They are movements that require a unique and coordinated skill set. And the only way to get better at those skills is by practicing those movements. Mobility is essentially the aggregate of all of the physical qualities we have touched on so far. And fortunately, in this case, the sum is greater than the parts. Synergy, if you will. Referring back to the ecological theory of motor learning, the better your mobility, the more affordances you can perceive. The more your environment opens up to you, the more options you have. Fortunately, you are always working on your mobility if you train regularly. And you are really enhancing your mobility if you use exercises that combine many facets into one, like Olympic weightlifting. The snatch, for example, requires high flexibility in the lower half and the upper half of the body, and you have to be strong and powerful in those positions in order to be successful at the snatch. If you train with a full range of motion across most exercises, train with a large variety of exercises, and focus on good timing and execution, you will definitely improve your mobility. Of course, you can also focus on flexibility in and of itself, and I really enjoy static stretching and exploring ranges of motion you can't really find in most exercises. I often start mini sessions off with basic static stretching that I will feel help expose me to big ranges of motion that are similar to the exercises I will be doing for the day. However, as I said, I am also working on my flexibility when I weight train because I train throughout an entire range of motion. And getting into deep ranges of motion with weights is some of the best stretching you could ever do. What does a training week look like? The predominant unit of time that I use to structure my training is a week. I usually do something active nearly every day. Sundays are usually the only days I will take off from training, and if I do anything on a Sunday, it's more of just like a casual walk. My main requirement is that I train each quality at least once with some emphasis. From there, I try to be done with a training session in an hour or less. Some days might be a bit over an hour, especially if I'm Olympic lifting. Some days are less than an hour, as I don't lift weights every day. Sometimes I will just take the doggo on a good 30 to 60 minute walk or jog. Sometimes I combine conditioning and weightlifting on the same day. I try not to limit the possibilities of a training session outside of having them be around an hour on average. With this being said, here is a week of training I recently completed with some other training I have done sprinkled in.
All right, here we go on Monday. Started off by taking the doggo for a walk. Took a long walk this day, probably 30 minutes or so. And then at the end of the walk, there's a couple of front yards that I can sort of jog and sprint across. We did about 4 reps here. Then I worked up to a relatively heavy set of deadlifts. I haven't really been deadlifting at all, but wanted to just build up into, I don't know, this 4 or 5 reps or so. Just one good set. Then I backed some weight down and just did a good set of Romanian deadlifts to try to focus on hamstring development here. At least emphasize that a little bit more with this exercise. Then I did some single arm rows Again, thinking about the quality of synergy, it's not that I'm trying to do most exercises to emphasize one quality. I'm trying to just focus on multiple things at once here. Flexibility, strength, and hypertrophy. Really reaching down to the in range of motion. Did some dumbbell side bends here. Trying to stretch at the bottom and do a shrug at the top, because why not, you know? Shrugs are great. Make me feel jacked, you know? Then finished with some forearm curls. Nothing crazy here, very simple. Just curl the forearm, or the wrist, I guess I should say. Then flip the hand over and start extending. Keep those forearms nice and strong. Day number 2, took the doggo for a walk. Then on this session, it was a bit of a quicker session. I just did 5 sets of ascending reps, or ascending weight, with low incline bench press. And then in between each set, I did 30 seconds of a row at a high intensity, trying to get that glycolytic machinery going. Here's that rowing. Again, did a set of these in between every set of bench press. Third session of the week, started off with some light plyometrics. These are just pogos. Then ticked up the intensity a bit here and started involving the knees. And then finally, trying to jump as high as I can with each rep. Look at me go. Look at the ups. Somebody called the NBA. Took the doggo for a walk. Quick walk today. Then just crush some upper body. Did some strict curls. Love leaning against something sturdy here, so that way I don't cheat at all. Probably did like 2 sets to 8 to 12 reps to failure on this day for each exercise. This is just like a JM press. Really focusing on bending the elbows as much as I can, working on the triceps. Dumbbell pullovers. Love doing this exercise as a means for a really good stretch more than anything else. That in range of motion there just feels so good. Love dumbbell pullovers for that reason in particular. And then finally finished the session with just some basic static stretching, just trying to find some really good, clean, in range of motion. Trying to actually push it a little bit as well, so that way I can actually find new ranges of motion, get something out of the stretching. Then on the last day of the week, I took the doggo for a walk. Did a few jumps here, just single leg jumps off of a bench, both legs. Man, look at the calves right there. Stretched a little bit. Trying to relax into that. Then just power clean my haunches off. Just ripping some weights. Bink. Bow. Bam. Come on now. Did a couple sets of squats. I think 5 reps here. Hard to go wrong with some squats. Did some ab work as well to finish. And there's a training week. Very simple, and just trying to work on all those qualities that I was talking about before.
Go do stuff. My goal with this video was to discuss with you not only how I stay physically prepared, but also give you a framework as to what that preparedness means. I try to keep things relatively simple, and in some instances, maybe I was too simple and could have said more. However, one of the primary aims was to keep the information practical, and a full exposition of each physical quality is well outside the scope of this video. But you really don't need to know all the little physiological mechanisms that underpin each quality. You just need to know that the quality exists, what that quality means, and that you can certainly train it and improve it. Physical preparedness is a blessing. I am extremely grateful that I have a strong and healthy body, but I've also worked on it tirelessly. I have trained nearly every week for the past decade and a half, and now at 31 years old, I really, truly feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. In fact, I want to continue to develop my physical preparedness. I will never stop training. I hope that this video has not only given you insight as to how and why to do the same, but also maybe the inspiration to make it happen. There is a bright and beautiful world out there that I am so grateful I have the opportunity to interact with. There are rivers to follow, oceans to traverse, fish to be caught, trails to hike, mountains to climb, places to explore. I know that by preparing myself physically and mentally through training, I will be better able to do these things and more. With this being said, I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Hope you have a great rest of your week. And as always, until the next one, go do stuff. Pew!